Let's be real up front, the Deathadder V3 Pro, or David as we're going to affectionately call him for the rest of this video, is an absolute banger mouse to use. It just isn't very fun to review. Razer engineered such a little ergo specimen with David that it makes it really hard to critique, outside of reaching for mouse nerd exclusive nitpicks. Oh heavens please, will someone think about the pre-travel? Instead, let's keep it short and punchy with 5 reasons why our hot boy summer David should be your main, and 2 reasons why it might not be.
What can you do, David?
I can do almost anything that could possibly be asked of me.
Is there anything you would like to say, David?
I would like to express gratitude to those who created me.
Meet David, your ergonomic king from Razer Industries.
So Razer really have hit a home run with David, but what makes the 3rd iteration of the Deathadder such a solid pick? Point 1. The shape and the size. First off, David is the 3rd generation that Razer have dropped a Deathadder, and this time, the shape isn't really very Deathadder, and that's a good thing. Previous Deathadder shapes had plenty of edgelord curves and flared arches, looking more like Seto Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! Than a serious gaming mouse. David, on the other hand, is like a Deathadder that's graduated from that awkward high school phase and is settling in to dull worker bee life in an office cubicle, feeling much more subtle and easier to grip as a result. He does remain a very big lad though, and if you're not used to handling a hog in your right hand, you might find it a bit too much hump, especially coming from flatter shapes or if you predominantly fingertip like myself. Fortunately, with 20 by 10 centimeter hands, I could just about get away with a fingertip or claw hybrid grip. But fair warning for you teeny baby handed community members, this mouse is built like the guy she told you not to worry about and could very well be large enough to grip you instead. Next up for point 2, the tech inside Big Chungus. Get reviews, disclaimer, I am not your go-to data nerd tech tuber, so take my thoughts with a suitably large scoop of G Fuel. The mouse uses what Razer call their 30K optical sensor, which pretty much translates to Razer bought exclusivity to the best sensor that Pixar had available at the time of purchase. Because of this, you get exactly the performance you'd expect, with some of the most accurate tracking including features like motion sync. Let's be real, I don't know what that means either, but it says so on the back of the box, so must be pretty important. There's also a bonus little dongle you can buy, which Razer have branded the hyper-polling dongle to sound suitably gamer, which will take your dinosaur and supercharge the pole rate all the way up to 4000 Hz. This not only gives your sensor 4 times as much tracking data to work on, but also gobbles up battery life like Augustus Gloop in a chocolate river. Bless. It is a shame that it isn't bundled as standard with the mouse, but if you want a mouse with the best sensor, the best tracking, best wireless and best pole rate, then Razer have you covered with our boy David. Only one caveat for the broke kings in the crowd playing Valorant on their mum's work laptop. 4000 Hz does need a decent CPU to drive, and you might see some frame dips in games. On to our 3rd point, the weight. The difference between the Deathadder V2 and David is like Paddy Pimblett off-season. Whilst they're very different weights, they're both very much still deadly weapons. Love you really, baddie. This massive weight drop and low 60 gram result on a mouse with the footprint the size of David make it feel much more nimble than you'd expect. It's almost like Razer have taken the frame of an NFL linebacker and given it the dexterity and grace of a ballet dancer. Now, I'm not necessarily someone that drank the Kool-Aid and believed the prophet RJN when they claimed that lower weight always improved your aim. But in the case of David, the 25 gram diet has absolutely had a positive impact on my experience and performance with the Deathadder. The size of the mouse meant that tracking remained stable, but the low weight allowed for easier flicks and reaction shots when I needed them. I describe using David as having a best of both worlds mouse that can cover high tempo arena shooters like Apex, but still keep pace with the crouch walking turtle boys for tac shooters like Valorant or CSGO. Moving swiftly on to point 4, the build and features. Now, we've spoken about the stonk sensor and wireless tech Razer are using, but that wouldn't count for much if David creaked and popped like an antique staircase when you had it in your hand. Fortunately, that's not the case, and David is solid in every conceivable mouse durability measure, which, as I gather from other reviews, should include a liberal and vigorous shaking test, as I often do in my gameplay. The coating is the same rough, chalky texture seen on the Viper V2 Pro and feels fantastic with or without the grip tapes that's included. They are fire, by the way. In terms of the clicks, Razer are using their V3 optical, which offer just the right amount of resistance to not accidentally spam click when repositioning, but not too heavy to be fatiguing if you were playing a click heavy RTS or MOBA, for example. Yet they do still have the trademark crunchy loud clicks though. so definitely more suited to solitary gaming, unless you fancy a co-worker's keyboard around the back of your cranium. The side buttons are large, well positioned and sharp, and I had no issues finding them in a variety of different grip options. The scroll wheel is also suitably large to match the rest of the mouse, sticking out like a set of 20-inch rims on a beamer. Look at it. Though it is a little softer than I'd liked without having really clearly defined steps as you use it, so consider that if you use your scroll heavily in a game. Flipping our boy David onto his back, the Razer PTFE skates are smooth enough to not need to worry about replacing, though it seems a bit of a bump to force customers to use their predefined skate shapes when there's otherwise so much flat booty real estate on the base. Lastly, with only the one shared button for power and DPI, you will need to install the dreaded Synapse software to configure your mouse fully. Fortunately, it does have onboard memory, so you can rid yourself of the chroma bloatware after a one-time setup if you so desire. On to our last point, and it is a relatively quick one: availability, but it is important in our supply chain constrained world. It's a minor benefit for sure, but one I don't think we should overlook, especially when big stores are more likely to either have deep coupon sales or be places you can spend your wholly undeserved Christmas gift cards from your loving family. We've now covered 5 good, but what about the 2 reasons that David ain't your boy? Starting with point 1, sensor placement. Now, this is a bit of a preference pick, but at a time when sensor placements are trending forward, David keeps it firmly in the center. In fact, for my own grip, which sits quite forward on the mouse, it actually feels a little bit rear bias. This limited the range of wrist motion I had for micro adjustments and meant a lot more arm aiming as a consequence. For me and my forward bias grip, it was one of the few personal gripes that I had with an otherwise largely flawless mouse, so I had to call it out. Point 2, and probably the elephant in the room, the price. The best tech doesn't come cheap, and David is certainly a classy boy, costing $150 US as standard, with a further $30 premium for our little hyperpolling dongle if you want to run him at 4000 Hz, not including shipping. Now, I'm not here to tell you what is good value for money, especially when some of you out there are dropping more than that, dono simping your e-girl of choice with your parents' credit card. You know who you are. But $180 is pushing the top end of what I'd look to pay for a mouse, regardless of how decent it may be. And yeah, for sure, you can pay more for specialist niche picks like a Final Mouse or Zaunkönig M2 Kanye, but with mid-tier mice performing so well around the $80 to $90 mark, it's hard to justify double that for your average bottom frag Andy, who's only going to feed regardless of what sort of equipment you put into their hands. To wrap, is David one of the best ergo shapes around? Yes. Does it have some of the best tech available? Yes. Despite this, is it objectively still an expensive mouse? Absolutely. So do I think you should buy one? How could I possibly know what you should do? Do what you think is best and you make your mama proud. I'll be back soon with more hot takes, spicy memes, but until then, like, sub and comment to feed both my ego and the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you in the next.